Behold, the Bowtech Core SR that I just went down to Eugene, Oregon at the Bowtech Pro Shop and built with the team there. Absolutely amazing, gracing our presence right now. You too could own one of these Bowtech SRs and go to Oregon and actually put it together with me and the team. How do you do that, you may ask? Well, in celebration of the 100th episode of my podcast, we are doing just that giveaway. I'm going to bring one of you to Oregon to the Bowtech Pro Shop to put together this exact bow, but built for you. But I'm also going to give you a bunch of other gear: a Peaks Solace 15 sleeping bag, a Yeti 210 cooler, big enough to hold elk quarters. It's marvelous. Go Hunt Insider membership, a Mountain Tough membership, a Leupold spotting scope. So you may ask, how do I get involved in this, David? Well, all you got to do is two things. One, you got to subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Altitude Show YouTube channel. Number two, you got to comment on this video tagged on top of the YouTube channel. You do both of those things, you're entered to win this $5,000 package, which includes a custom built Core SR and a trip to Oregon, plus Peaks, Yeti, Go Hunt, Mountain Tough, Leupold, all that amazing information you get from Go Hunt, the workouts you get from Mountain Tough, the gear you get from Leupold, Peaks, Yeti, Bowtech. Unbelievable. And I'm so stoked to do this because I'm stoked to do these podcasts. That's what you got to do, folks. Don't miss out. Come to Oregon, hang out. Let's go shoot. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness. I just turned 43 last month, getting a little bit old, but I am in the best shape of my life. And a lot of that can be attributed to the Mountain Tough app because they have programs for beginners. They have programs for the elite athlete and everything in between. A functional fitness program for the hunter. And it's amazing. I love it. I know personally Dustin, one of the founders of this company. I've known them since they started the company. I truly trust them and what they tell me about my health. They're constantly testing different things in the lab in Bozeman, Montana to optimize their app and make it better for you, the consumer. So you need to go out to the app store. You need to get the Mountain Tough app, use my code altitude and or use code Dave20 and it gives you a huge discount on the app. Dave20 gives you 20% off. So you need to go do that, and you need to start doing this a few times a week at least. And you will never feel better. Like I have never felt better in my life. So go out and get the Mountain Tough app. Use my code Dave20 for 20% off. You will not regret it. So you're on Starlink, eh? And where are you? Like Colorado?
Yeah, no. So right now I'm in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
But
sick.
I actually use Starlink wherever I go now, man. So just for the
How
sake of
how's it worked for
consistency,
you? I've kind of thought about getting it.
yeah. So well, here in Puerto Rico, it's better than the mainline like infrastructure providers, and
Uh-huh.
it's more reliable. There's no doubt about it. The only time that I have any issue with it, man, is this kind of stuff. Sometimes there's just that little latency. Other
Mm-hmm.
than that, I can honestly say it's probably the most reliable internet I've had in my life. So I could do a commercial for it, man. I got no complaints.
What are you doing in Puerto Rico, dude?
So I live down here. I mean, it used to be just a couple months a year, and then now it seems to be extending every year a little bit further. And I'm probably at that zone where I'm like close to half of the year down here. But
Mm-hmm.
I've got some family who lives down here. I've got a brother who's lived down here for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I just take my kids down here. We homeschool our kids, so we kind of live
Uh-huh.
half the year here, and then the other half we either live in Colorado or we spend a fair amount of time in Oregon too. So that doesn't answer your question. Your question is what I do down here. So part of it is that I've got family down here, so I just bring the kiddos down and they can be around their cousins. And
Uh-huh.
the other thing is I've got other hobbies that are in the ocean. So I'm an obsessive spearfisher, man. I like rod and reel fishing. So it's
I
just a
saw
way
that,
to
dude.
yeah, it just keeps the adventure going. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, dude. Spearfishing is so fascinating to me. I personally have only done it or tried to do it, and I haven't been successful yet. Twice. Um, I was out in on Molokai with Kimmy Warner and Mark Healy, and
Yeah, okay. So yeah,
we
so
went
you've gone
out.
with some pros.
yeah, which was super intimidating. Um, but dude, I get seasick really easily, which is really annoying because I love the ocean. But even just spearfishing, I was getting queasy. But I think
Sure.
I have that solved now. I think I found a medication that I can take because last time I was in Hawaii and I went fishing, I was totally fine. So,
Oh, okay.
but I've always wanted because spearfishing is you're just hunting on the bottom of the. I mean, it's bow hunting at the bottom of the ocean, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, basically, man. And just Dave, I wanna circle back to the seasickness thing. So because I get sickness too. So I wanna talk about it, dude, because to me I've dug into like the whole science of figuring it out.
Please
But
do, because I need
so
I
we'll
need.
we'll we'll go we'll get into it, dude. Because one thing I realized, man, is that particularly amongst the fishing community, particularly guys that spearfish blue water a lot, I would
Mm-hmm.
say that 50% of the people who do it get sick. And so it's actually super prevalent. But well, I want to answer your other question, man. Like my thoughts on how it relates to hunting. I'm totally with you. It's very similar to hunting. I think my progression with it, there's two big differences. I'm sure you ran into this, man, like in the time that you've done it, is like if you think about elk hunting, deer hunting, going out west, like there's these obstacles, these physical obstacles, these logistics of just going out there. Like it can be intimidating to somebody because it's like a foreign environment to them if they didn't grow up in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
But spearfishing, man, like to me, it's the next level of that. Like you have to master comfort with the ocean, comfort with breath hold and all that
Mm-hmm.
before you're really hunting. You know what I mean? There's like
Right.
this barrier. There's this barrier that it's not a soft prerequisite, right? Like
Right.
if you're fat and out of shape, you could still go elk hunting in Colorado, and it might affect your effectiveness, but
Mm-hmm.
you really can't go spearfishing in a meaningful way until you're comfortable in the ocean and you've got some of the free diving type of skills in your belt. So it's a little bit different that way, I would say. But other than
Mm-hmm.
that, really, really similar. The other big one, man, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I always get like deep in it with people. When you're actually spearfishing, dude, it, fish pick up like a vibe much more
Mm-hmm.
than big game. Like if you grew up deer and elk hunting, people will always be like, oh man, the minute I started to get my rifle together, the elk that was 500 yards away or 400 yards away, like it just seemed to like sense me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I've been driving, I drove by that buck 5 times, finally decided to quit passing up on him, and I was going to shoot him, and the next time, like, he wasn't there. Like they're kind of like
Right.
myths, you know what I mean? Or it seems
Uh-huh.
like we view them as myths. When you start to spearfish, you realize that some of that might be like exaggerated and myth, but with fish, it's absolutely true. Like you can drop down under a reef, get calm, hold onto the reef, and you can have, fish all around you. And the minute you look at one, or the minute that you decide to swing your gun and shoot one, and even before you start moving, the fish will react. It's not a like I would have called BS on that like 10 years ago before I'd done much of it, but absolutely they like have a sixth sense, and they know like when you've gone into predator mode. Oh, sorry, dude. I hit my stand-up desk.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah. I put my drink down on my stand-up desk. It's gonna like crush my legs. Come
No
back
worries.
here. Are we back in frame?
Oh, yeah, you're good. You're good. You look great.
All right, dude. Yeah, sorry, man.
No,
So yeah,
I
those are
saw, dude, I see that. Like when I snorkel, which is the closest, when I'm out snorkeling, and like last year, this last summer, I was out on the Big Island, and there's some really good spots as an amateur, to go out and like really good. And I have a friend that lives out there that's like basically a professional spear fisherman, and
oh, okay, cool.
I was out with him watching him hunt, and dude, like you can swim by those fish just as like a tourist, and you're like,
Sure.
oh, I could easily shoot that fish. But
Oh yeah.
the moment you put a gun in your hand, good luck getting anywhere near
Oh
him.
yeah.
Even this beach we were at, he's like, I mean, he's this guy's like full blooded Hawaiian, lived out there his whole life. I mean, he's like a pro, right?
Okay.
And
Sure.
he was out for like 2 hours, and he came back in and he's like, dude, I know you think you can get close to those fish, just swimming out there, but he's like, I these fish are so spooky, and the energy, they just they won't let me get
Oh
anywhere
yeah.
near them to shoot them.
Yeah, yeah. And it's crazy
So
because yeah,
I believe it. I believe it. Like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
just well, that's how they survive, right? And I don't know. I know that like there's like Mark Healy. He works that hex gear.
Sure.
That what does that do? That blocks like your electromagnetic field or something?
Yeah, something like that. I'm not super familiar with it. I mean, I know the company you're talking about, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
along the same lines. Like, is it, I don't know if it works or not. I've never used it before, but I think the idea is like, does it contain some of that, whatever like vibe you're putting out? You know what I mean?
yes, yeah. Like, but I also think that um, elk and deer do. I don't know what it is because I'm not a scientist, but there is something, man.
Sure.
Like
Oh
for
yeah, yeah, yeah,
for some reason, when you don't have a tag in your pocket, even if it's during the season, you tend to get opportunities. And then when you have a
yeah,
tag, just when your energy is different, I don't know, like if it's quantum physics or whatever it might. Maybe someday we'll actually figure it out. But dude,
yeah, yeah.
even humans, like when I walk in, the other night, for example, I go to jujitsu class, and
Sure.
the other night I walked in, and my training partner, I just kind of felt like he was off. Like he didn't say
Yeah.
anything to me, didn't say a word to me. I'm like, dude, are you all right? And he's like, nah, not really. I'm like, yeah, I can kind of sense that. Like, what the hell's going on? How can I help you? But like as humans, we have that. You can feel the energy field, and I know that sounds kind of woo woo, but I do think there's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
to that.
No, no, I think for sure, man. And for whatever reason, it's non it's it in mammals, humans, whatever, it's subtle enough that it's kind of like, is it there or isn't it there? Like what's going on? But in the ocean, it's not subtle. It's like blatantly obvious. And the thing is like the other thing that you notice in the ocean, and anybody who spears a lot, eventually you got to deal with sharks. Like here in Puerto Rico, if you go spearfishing, I mean, if you're off the reefs, like you're in the deeper water, 100%
Hmm.
you're going to deal with sharks. You're going to deal with sharks every single day. And
Wow.
it's weird because like the vibe that you can, I mean, I'm not like a super experienced guy with sharks, but I mean, if you go once or twice and you dive with sharks, you'll start to pick up on their vibe like really quickly. Like you'll see a shark and you'll be like, it's just like it doesn't really scare me. And then there'll be just a bunch of different variables that one will start acting a certain way, and you're like, dude, I want to get back in the boat like now. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
And it's the same idea. There's just I mean, I speculate really what it is, Dave, is there's a lot of subtle variables that our brains are able to mesh really quick. You know what I mean? And I think
Right.
deer and elk do it too. Like they're able to pick up on like, a few different variables. Like an obvious one is eye contact. Like eye contact absolutely matters. In fish, it's very blatant, but I think it's the same with mammals. Like if you can
Hmm.
avoid it, if you have elk in real close that you're, if you got a bull that comes up and hangs up on you, like you weren't ready, you didn't get drawn, and now he's looking at you, he's close enough to shoot, but you got to draw. Like
Yep.
the worst thing you can do is try to draw while he's looking at you. The second worst thing you can do is stare him down with your eyes, like, and make eye contact.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if
Right.
he sees those eyes, he's like, boom, out of here. It's the
Hmm.
same. So I think that's like a kind of a overt variable, but I think there's like
Hmm.
all these other things that we're able to kind of mesh together as kind of the animal part of us, and we can draw
Hmm.
conclusions like super fast. And we just haven't, I mean, I assume they'll figure it out at some point, but we haven't been able to replicate that, I don't think. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it is that's different about fish, though? Why do you
I
what's your feeling like? Because there is something going on there for sure. Sharks and
Yeah,
whales and like the whole ecosystem. is just incredible. Like the what's in the ocean, I guess. Like if you like study whales or sharks, and just like
Right.
sharks, for example, how far away they can smell blood, and like there's so many interesting things about the ocean, and it just seems like there's a lot we don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, it's like an undiscovered place in a lot of ways. Dude, I don't know. Like I have my theories. Like one of my theories is that like you're in the water, so you're
Mm-hmm.
sharing like a like almost like a I don't know how to say like how I describe it. You're sharing like a more like viscous environment with the fish, right? So
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're like putting out there, I think it just goes through the water quicker or something,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I actually think that like one thing I've noticed like if you start to think about swinging a spear gun, particularly a long spear gun, like
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a situation where you have to swing it on like whatever fish, these things can be hard to swing if it's like a 5.5 foot gun, and
Mm-hmm.
man, the minute you start thinking about swinging it, when you start pushing water, fish sense that really quickly. So I think there might just
Mm.
be it could just be like it could be literally physical movement in the water that they
Yeah.
detect. So I think there's that component. I mean, the other thing is that there's a distance thing, right? Like, I mean, if you get 15 yards from an elk, like your heart's going to explode out of your heart or out of your
Right.
body because it feels like you're
Yeah.
so close. Whereas when you're spearfishing, I mean, even if you're in 200 feet of visibility, you still got to get 20 feet from a wahoo to shoot it. You know what I mean? So everything is just like a closer environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I think the other thing too about it is that they live in such an environment that the predator thing is constant, man. Like it's 24/7. You know what I mean? I was talking to somebody about it. Like it's interesting, like, game animals and land animals, if you really think about it, it seems to me like most of them, if you go out into the wilderness of Colorado, if you just think like the spectrum of animals out there, the vast majority of them are not predators. You know what I mean? Like the ones we
Right.
observe, they're all like they're pretty much like prey. It's not like a deer eats or it's not like an elk eats deer and a buffalo eats elk. You know what I mean?
Right.
But in the ocean, like everything that you're pursuing, like they deal with both. They're like the stuff that you interact with as a spear fisherman. It's not the stuff that's eating plankton and algae. It's the stuff that's like in the predator prey crap like 24/7. So they might just
Right.
be evolved like more tuned up to it. I don't know. You know.
Right. Right. Yeah. What do you think it is about, like Kimmy taught me, like go to the bottom and like rustle rocks and sand and stuff, and it can draw those fish into like spear range. Why does that work? What,
Yeah, and
because
all that and
if
all and
movement and sound scares them, why would that movement and sound make them want to come in? Just because they're curious?
Yeah, I don't. So all the stuff you're talking about, every time somebody has shown me something or they've like told me something on a boat, like, "Hey, dude, I want to show you this." In my mind, I'm thinking like, "There's no way that works." You know what I mean? Like that sounds
Uh-huh.
ridiculous. And then you see it work, right? Like dusting, like going down to a reef and hitting the dirt, like snapper and stuff will come to that. I I I think what it is there is kind of like what I was just. It's related to what I was just talking about because of this constant like predator prey relationship going on. They're all opportunistic. You know what I mean? So if they think like something's getting eaten, something's getting torn in half, like they're going to show up to get a piece of it. I think that's what it
Gotcha.
is, man.
Oh,
Like I
gotcha.
think that I think like that. I mean, when you dust the ground and snapper come out or you get grouper to come out, like they I think they're just reacting to they think that something is getting killed or there's some sort of war going on and they can take advantage of the opportunity. I mean,
Hmm.
excuse me. Sharks are Sharks pick up on that like crazy, man. Like if you get a fish like vibrating, like you want to get a hold of that thing and get it dead like quick because the sharks their attitudes will change immediately. Because they
Oh,
think
no
there's some sort
shit.
of opportunity.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
That's
dude,
great.
it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's really odd. There's actually like for better or worse, it's kind of gone viral. But there's a video of me, and I've got a wahoo on the surface, And this wahoo, dude, like it was totally my mistake, Dave. But like those things, you got to kill them when you get a hold of them because they're strong, you know. And I got
Yes.
a hold of it, and the way it was hit, I thought it was dead. It had just like it basically had fought for a while on the reel of the spear gun. I thought it was dead, and I'm just an idiot. It's totally my fault, but I stuck my hand up in the gills of the wahoo and I got a hold of it, and that usually kind of shuts them down, but they kind of
Mm-hmm.
like are startled by it. When I did that, it just felt dead, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
was excited, exhausted. And the guy that was with me started to take pictures off of a GoPro. And I was like, okay, awesome. Well, the fish, there's a video of it from the surface. The fish actually like he like woke up and he like drug me in a big circle, you know? And
Yep. Yeah.
the fish is like vibrating.
Oh,
And the
geez.
line was kind of wrapped around. It was like it wasn't a safe situation, but it looks way worse than it was. But whatever. I made some mistakes on it, you know, whatever.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, like when I watched that video and like all the freaking thousands of comments on it from like, you know, a lot of spearfishermen are like, geez, dude, he's like calling in sharks. Cause I was, man. Like like I had the wahoo, I was wrapped around it and it was just like, and that's when those sharks just like come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Because that's
Right.
like that just calls them in, man. They notice
That's
that
creepy,
flashing, that
man.
vibration. Yeah. No, it is creepy, man. When you're caught up on other stuff, you know. Like I don't think
Yeah.
like here, dude, sharks. I don't think sharks have any interest in killing a mammal because they don't do it. There's no mammals in the Caribbean, you know. Or
What
there's
do you
no.
mean
I
by
mean,
that?
I
There's
shouldn't
no
say that.
seals?
Yeah. So there's no. There's obviously mammals. There's dolphins, whales, you know, those species, but there's
Yeah.
not. There's as far as I know, for sure in Puerto Rico, there's not a big relationship between sharks killing mammals like seals, you know, that sort of thing. So
Uh-huh.
a lot of what they're killing is fish, you know. So if you think about it, their prey is mostly like down the water column, right? They're not used to hitting prey on the surface. Um,
Oh,
and that's
really?
I think that yeah, I think that's why, dude. I mean, for the amount of people that interact with sharks, like you know, among like spear fishermen and stuff,
Uh-huh.
um, you know, that's why there's so. I mean, that's why there's so few, you know, shark bites and stuff. When you do hear about a guy getting bit, it's like you know, he had a fish in his hand, it was vibrating, you know, and a silky or something came up, you know, silky shark like came up and was trying to get the fish and you know bit the side
Mm-hmm.
of his hand or something. They don't
Right.
like you don't hear. I mean, it happens like you know, people get killed by tiger sharks and stuff, but like it's rare, man. And I think it's because they're not they haven't learned or they haven't been taught or they haven't evolved to hit prey on the surface. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah, you hear about them, but if you think about how many people are in the ocean 24 hours a day,
Oh yeah.
and you know what I mean, it's the odds are definitely low. Although it seems like anecdotally, I've been hearing more and more coming out of Hawaii, and that might just be. But people also think. I mean, you and I both have lived and hunted in grizzly bear country, and
Yeah.
if you're like an outsider, every year there's like 2 or 3 attacks, right, in the Yellowstone ecosystem. But having lived there for a long time, I've never even seen a grizzly bear outside the park. Like
Right.
it's just the chances are low. I mean, the chances are there, and I'm on alert. I'm prepared as you can be, but the chances are statistically pretty low that you're going to have a bad encounter unless you make. Um, there's
Yeah, you
decisions
make
you
a
could
scene.
make.
Yeah.
You could make decisions that would increase your risk, like going back to a gut pile or a dead animal the day after, hanging your meat in your tent, stuff like that. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah.
if you take all the precautions, the odds are low. You could still walk around a corner in a trail, and there could be a cub on the one side of the trail and the mommy on the other side, and that's when the attacks happen generally in Yellowstone.
Yeah, just bad luck.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
I hear you, man. It's like worth being it's you know, the minimal effort it takes to be diligent about it, like why not? But in the
right.
spectrum of things, it's probably not like the big statistical things that you should really be that worried about.
Right. Right. I think just being aware, dude. It's been a while since I've talked to him, but I have a friend that spearfishes off the coast of Oregon for
Oh,
like
okay.
for like lingcod and certain types of eels, and
Mm-hmm.
to me, and he does it at night. To
Sure.
me, that's like ultra creepy. Like, fuck that. I'm
Yeah,
never
yeah.
doing that. No way. But he's like
Yeah, super.
going into caves with like a headlamp, like trying to hunt these lingcod. Um,
Yeah.
dude, no way, not a
Yeah,
chance.
I mean, all the like I've dove the north coast of California a lot, and it's kind of similar, man. And I'm with you, dude. I It's just like you gotta wear way more weight. You gotta because you're wearing a way thicker wetsuit. The water's cold. Visibility is always like nothing. Just spooky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't see anything, right?
No. Yeah, it's
And that's
totally.
and that's great white country.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like
Uh,
from where you're at all the way down to like the Golden Gate Bridge and that area. That's
huh.
like that's as thick as it gets, I think, for great whites.
And I'll be honest, like I talk pretty big about the statistic reality of getting bit by a shark, but one of the reasons I don't surf here is because I don't know, it just creeps me out that dark water.
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
surf all day in Hawaii with tiger sharks if I whatever. But like, there's something about going out in Northwest Oregon in our ocean. First of all, it's cold as shit, and I don't
Yeah,
love
yeah,
it. But also, it's like black water, and like you're in a black wetsuit, and there's seals everywhere that look exactly like you that the sharks also eat. uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah. You feel like
there's
you're
not,
asking for it.
there's not attacks very often, at least that I know about, but it just still seems creepy for some reason.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure, dude. Let's talk about seasickness before we get off
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you because we got off that. Like teach me the ways.
Well, I want to. So I want to like I'll give you my spiel on it, man. I want to hear what works for you because I mean, dude, I used to hate it because every time I would go, it was almost like the anxiety of like ruining a trip. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And then
Mm-hmm.
also it sucks to be on a boat and kind of be like the downer of the guy that's sick. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I actually notice for me, Dave, and this may be what your experience if you're doing it in the context of spearfishing, but I actually tend to get more of like the vertigo slash nausea in the water. So particularly if I'm
Mm.
in, like if I'm in like 150 foot of water where there's no point of reference, I'll like it doesn't matter how calm it is, man. I'll still get sick. And
Really?
so yeah, I'll still get it. And I've realized talking to a bunch of guys who particularly spearfish blue water, a lot of them get the same thing. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful, and there's like but there's just no point of reference, right? In the sun
Gotcha.
hits the water, and you'll just get like a. I mean, a lot of guys will like be like, that's not seasickness. You're getting vertigo. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's like the same
Uh,
symptoms and whatever.
mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
what I do and what works for me is I take a half a pill of Dramamine the night before. I
Mm-hmm.
don't drink any caffeine. To me and a lot of guys I know is a trigger, like absolutely. So half a pill of Dramamine the night before, no caffeine in the morning, and then I take a water jug and I put ginger in it, and I'll explain to you why I do this. But I put a
Okay.
little ginger in. I put a little ginger in it. Some guys say ginger helps. I don't know. It could just be like a natural thing that's total BS or not. I don't know, but I don't mind the taste, so why not? I put ginger in there, and then I put a bunch of cinnamon in that water, and
Mm-hmm.
I like the taste of it, and so I put that in the jug of water, and then well, in the morning before I get on the boat, I'll take a whole Dramamine, and then if it's a whole day, like I'm out on a boat for like 8-10 hours. Usually throughout the day, I'll take two more. I'll take two more Dramamine, like spread out during the day, once once I take once I get into the point of already consuming like my second or third Dramamine, I can't stop being active. Basically, if it's towards the end of the day and I feel like a little nausea, I usually won't take one because if I do that and I'm not active, like I'm not diving, I'll fall like it'll take me out. Like the drowsiness just knocks me out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yes,
But
I do.
the key is the key is like if you've done that, like if you get sick, like if you like a lot of times, man, this is gonna sound gross, Dave, but like, dude, I'll come out of a dive. Like I've literally shot fish and like felt getting sick on the, coming up for air, come up to the top, I don't have my snorkel in my mouth, like just breathe, breathe, and then throw my snorkel in my mouth and stick my head down and just vomit right through my snorkel, just just blow it right
Oh
out my snorkel.
God.
I do like that's not uncommon for I might do that 1 out of 5 times I blue water dive, and then I'll go back to the boat and I get that cinnamon, that water that has cinnamon and ginger in it, and I'll just I'll drink, I'll stay hydrated. And this is
Hmm.
gonna sound gross, dude, but if you have cinnamon in your water, whenever you vomit, you won't. It doesn't feel as bad because it doesn't have like that horrible like bile taste. And
Yes.
I personally I can drink more water, like I can immediately rehydrate. And a lot of times, man, if I get sick, I'll get sick like one time, like barf, barf once, and it may be 3 hours into diving, and the rest of the day I'll be fine. And I used see my
Wow.
problem, man. I used to get sick, 3 4 hours in, and then my
Hmm.
whole day would be shot. And sometimes we're like 20 miles offshore or whatever. And you know how it is, like being
Yeah.
seasick. You got other guys that are diving, like you're sitting in the boat, like you're not getting better until you're at shore. So it's like it's torture. But with that
Oh, it's
little protocol,
so hopeless. You just feel
yeah,
hopeless.
yeah. Yeah, with that protocol, man, like one, I probably less than 10, like 10% of the time I'll get nausea where I got to throw up. But if I do, I can recover with that protocol. So yeah, tell me what's worked for
Okay,
you,
so
man.
just to review because I want to I'm literally taking note of this. It's a half a Dramamine the night before, and
Yeah.
then at least two during the activity. Did you say two or three?
Yeah, almost. So I usually take two during the day. If
Uh huh.
I might take three if it's like a 10-hour period, And you
Mm-hmm.
can you can look at Dramamine. It's actually high how many you can take over 10 12 hours on the bottle. It's much higher than people think. Like I think you can take like up to six or something like that. I
Yeah,
usually like two or three is the max for me, Dave. Or it just gets me, it conks me out. And also like you're spearfishing, dude. Like you can't be, you
you
don't
got to
want
be
to be like
alert
an, yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't want to be like an idiot. There's things that like it's a pretty uncontrolled environment.
for sure. And also, I would love to know if you've ever measured your how many calories you're burning. Like spearfishing is
Oh yeah,
one of the hardest workouts I've ever had. Like
yeah, yeah.
swimming way out and maintaining that for an hour, dude. That's an
Oh yeah,
intense workout. And I'm in good shape, but I'm not in good shape for that. That's like a total. You're probably using all kinds of different muscles, and maybe it's heavy
sure.
cardio too. Um,
I think it's a
but it's
little
a
bit of
workout.
everything. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is even if you're wearing, the perfect size wetsuit, like in the water, you have so much more body temp regulation. I think
Hmm.
that wears people out too.
Oh, because they're cold.
Yeah, they're on the boat and then they're in the water, like that fluctuation and stuff.
Hmm.
I think it wears people out a little bit, but
I think
um,
what wears me out the most is the breathing. Like when you're on land,
sure.
you can regulate your breathing better. But like you said in the beginning of this conversation, the regulation of the breathing is everything. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of other skills you got to have, but like talking to Kimmy and Mark, they're so good and calm about regulating their breathing. And that's what keeps them down longer. That's what allows them to be calm around the fish so they're not spook. And ultimately, it helps them be
Yeah.
successful. But if you're new to it, you're basically hyperventilating. Even when I'm
Yeah.
snorkeling and I'm swimming, it's like you can hear your breath, which creeps me
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you get a little salt water in your mouth. You like spit it out your snorkel. You come up. You're like treading water. You're trying to get your. That's exhausting to me.
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah, that's just like getting comfortable. And dude, I mean, you nailed it. Like Kimmy and those people. I'm sure I don't know Kimmy, but I've dove with some guys down here that are like pretty. They've been doing it their whole life. And what's
Hmm.
weird, Dave, is like I'm not. I sometimes I can get there, but it's rare that I get there. But these guys that have been doing it their whole life, they get into a zone. They get into a zone that's like like I think you could probably relate to this, man. Like when I go, it's still like when I first started spearfishing, it was 75% panic and 25% having fun. You know what I mean? And that
Yes,
now
I do.
now now it's probably now it's like 20% panic, 80% having fun. But these guys that really master it, it's 100% like meditative. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
they are like in the zone, and that's why they have absurd breath holds. Like it's just as an anecdote. I was talking to just a couple days ago. I was talking to a guy. He's lives down here. He's actually a professional athlete, like an insane physical capabilities, all of that. And I was talking to him about diving, and he said that he was doing static breath holds, and he can hold his breath for like 3.5 minutes or something like that. And he hasn't done a whole lot of diving, and he's like, yeah, dude, because we were lobster diving. I brought him some lobster, and he's like, well, how long do you got to hold your breath? And I was like, well, if you can, dude, if you can hold your breath for 45 seconds a minute, like you can catch lobsters all day. And he's like, oh, dude, I've done static breath holds, just sitting there in a chair or whatever for 3.5 minutes, like no problem. But dude, like it's totally different. Like
oh
usually
yeah.
somebody who can somebody can static breath hold on land for 3.5 minutes. They go try to dive in the water, and they start, they're like, well, how long was I down? And it's like 20 seconds, 25
Mm,
seconds. And it's because their heart rate's like out of control. You know what I mean? And
right.
so these people who are really good at it, they get themselves in the zone where like they can transfer most of their normal breath hold. They can do that when they're spearfishing, which is like watching somebody that's down for 2 minutes, two and a half
Hmm.
minutes is like, holy smokes. I mean, you can,
Oh, that's
a
just
lot, you can,
crazy, man.
yeah. I mean, you can go to 100. I mean, as a guy who's hauling butt and can equalize really well, they can go to 100 feet and back free diving in less than, or like right at a minute. You know what I mean? So you can
Right.
imagine like, a couple minute breath hold, it's like being down there for a long time.
Oh, dude. I can relate to all of this because when I first started doing jujitsu, like probably the first 12 months, at least the first 6 months, when you're getting strangled 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times a night, like when you, or even just if someone lays on top of you, that pressure makes you panic. And
Yeah,
part
sure.
of the first year of doing it is, and they tell you this, is like just learning to understand how much pressure you can take and really that you're okay. You can get through this moment. Like for me,
Yeah,
the first 12 months of it doing that was my biggest learning, is learning what I can get through and where not to panic. And like, I have a much better feeling now of that point of like, I'm either of being screwed or just knowing that, yeah, this sucks. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy situation, but I can get out of this. And especially when
sure.
someone's got like a submission on you or something like that, um, you just get better and better and better at handling that moment of intensity. And I
Yeah.
imagine diving's a little bit like that. It just takes time. And
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
now,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm no pro. I've only been doing jujitsu for 18 months or something. But now I do feel like it's a little bit more relaxing to roll. And even if I get tapped, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not panicking. My muscles are less sore the next day because I wasn't so tense. Like all those things, it's just like anything, right? You get better at it with time, and you learn. Even being alone out in the woods with elk or whatever, like just doing it and doing it and doing it, those reps, you eventually get better at handling the anxiety of it. Because it's crazy, dude. Like our hobbies, you and I's hobbies, are kind of crazy. Normal people are like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's interesting, man. Because I mean, basically, what you're talking about is like exposure. Just exposure therapy to things like makes a
Yes.
big difference. And I do have to ask you on jujitsu because you've been doing it for long enough now that I'm sure you've been exposed to this. But if you roll with like somebody really like who's really new, like it's like their fourth day in or their second day in, and they've gone to class but they haven't really sparred with anybody. When you feel them, they're like vibrating. You notice that? Like
Oh yeah,
they're
dude,
like
for
they
sure.
have what they haven't gone through the stage of like and they don't even realize that they're like their whole body is vibrating, because they're like, yeah. So there's like this huge difference. I think your analogy to all this stuff is the same, man. It's like if you take somebody who grew up in Manhattan and they get off an airplane, and then the next thing they do is they're sitting on a mule, and you're dragging them 4 hours into the wilderness to go elk hunting. It's like the same thing, dude. Like their body's vibrating because their body's like, you need to get the hell out of here now.
It's
You
just
know?
like putting me in Manhattan. I feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
No,
So
dude.
I
When
think it's
people first come into the class, like it took me a while to consciously notice what you're talking about, but now I really notice it, and it's like when I roll with those guys. First, I'll beat them because I just wait for them to freak out and lose all their energy, and then
sure.
afterwards I'll be like, dude, if you would have just calmed down and took some breaths, I probably wouldn't have beat you because you're stronger than I am,
Yeah,
and
sure.
you can be better than me. But the only reason I beat you is because I just outlasted your anxiety because your anxiety is draining you. You're just flailing. You're just flailing. You're not thinking through what you're doing because you've never done this before. That's totally normal. But
Yeah,
and then when I go with someone who's better than me, I'm still a degree of doing that too because now I'm kind of anxious
sure.
about rolling with them. So it's just stages of it. But I totally agree. And if you hunt with somebody, I was reading on your blog today, you had an article about what separates the great elk hunters from everybody else. Um,
Oh, sure.
and I agreed with everything you said. One of the things I've noticed on because I've been elk hunting since I was basically 2 or 3 years old. It's basically been my main thing my whole
Oh, okay.
life.
Sure.
And over the course of and then working in the industry for the last 15 years, I've actually gotten to meet all of my idols, all of the people that I
Yeah, that's
actually think are
cool.
the best at bet. I mean, how often do you get to meet what you believe to be all the best guys at a thing, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
sure. Yeah, yeah.
in many cases, I've become friends with them or at least talk to them. And the one main thing that always stands out to me is their generally speaking, pretty calm individuals, like almost like meeting a Navy SEAL. Like they have great nerves. They weren't they weren't blessed with like me. I was blessed with like like I have anxiety I have to cope with all the time. But like they're
Oh,
like
I got you.
pretty calm and intelligent about the way they approach their hunting. But like you get them in those situations of high stress, they can maintain a level of calm through that where most people would totally fall apart.
Sure.
Even very experienced hunters typically fall apart. But there's these guys that can get through that moment and actually improve their performance as opposed to fall apart, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
and other than the other five or six traits that some of them you highlighted, um, that's the one that I don't know if you can definitely get better at that, but I don't know if you can learn to be the best at it because I think some of it's just biology. But
Yeah, I got you. So your idea, man, is that like it's causal to them being very effective hunters. It's not that they've developed it from hunting.
I think you can develop it. I think you can get better at it. Like I've gotten better at it.
Yeah,
But I think there's just, if you look at the highest performing people across any sport, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, whoever, name the person that's like the best ever, right?
sure.
I'll talk about golf because I was a golfer. Golfing,
Okay.
right? You get to the Division 1 level of golf, college golf, and it's like the greatest guys in high school, they go into college golf Division 1 and they're like, holy shit, this is like a whole nother level, right? But then the best Division 1 guys go to the PGA Tour and most of them suck. And then the PGA Tour, there's like usually three guys that are like just 5% better than the rest of them. And then out of those guys, there's usually one guy for a few years that just dominates. And then you have above that, like the Tiger Woodses, right? Who dominated
I
for
got you.
like 15 years. And I don't think he was necessarily a better ball striker or a better putter or a better, really, they're all about the same when it comes to actual skills. Like, I mean, there's minute differences. What
Yeah, but
separate
like
what sep-
quantitatively, like their stats are about the same.
they're about the same on average, right? Like you
Yeah,
get to the top 10 golfers, it's like one guy might be a little better of a putter and one guy might hit a little further, but they're about the same.
yeah,
And if you go watch them, they all are amazing, right? But
sure,
what separates Tiger from the rest of them is his mind. That was
sure,
really he had a belief in himself that just doesn't come along very often. And or like you'll see this in some UFC fighters and some wrestlers. I know a few hunters that are like this now. Some of those hunters are total assholes and arrogant and egotistical, and I don't like being around them.
sure,
But what I'm taking as arrogance actually annoyingly is confidence. Like they know
sure,
that they are going to succeed in the highest stakes of situations where even
right.
really good hunters, there's a lot of really good hunters. I would actually place myself in this bucket. I'm a really good hunter, but sometimes when I'm tested to the degree, I still fail. I don't fail. Like I still have those moments where I'm like, I shouldn't have failed there. I've been doing this my whole life. I should have been able to push past this. But there's guys
Right.
that just don't seem to have very many of those moments. And I just think there's just levels to everything. And I think some of it, in my opinion, is yeah, you got to develop the skills. Yeah, you got to be at the right place at the right time. Yes, you have to put the work in. There's all the things, right? But also, I think if you just have the right biology, the right
Yeah, yeah,
physio, you're just wired correct. My friend Ryan Lampers, I don't know if you know who that is.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know him, but I know of him for sure.
that guy, dude, that's what I'm talking about. The first time I ever hunted with him was for Coos deer in Arizona. And we showed up. He'd never been there. I'd never been there. And we're splitting up in the morning. And he goes one way, I go another way. Later that day, we get back to the truck and he's sitting there. And I said, "How'd you do, Ryan?" And this is archery hunting Coos. He said, "Oh, pretty good. Cool." And he's like, "Yeah, I got one." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I went to the back of the truck and there's a Boone and Crockett Coos deer that he shot with his bow, spot and stock at 8 yards or something crazy like this.
Yeah,
And for anybody who has ever hunted down there, you will know that getting 8 yards from a Coos deer on your first day of archery hunting them is crazy. Now, some may say that
yeah,
was
like
luck. He went down the next year and did the same. Well, actually, the next year he shot a 180-inch mule deer down there. And then the next year he shot
yeah,
another Boone and Crockett Coos deer. My point is, he's one of these guys, and I know him really well now. He's just
sure,
so even keeled and very intelligent and has all the skills, puts in the work and the research, and he just performs at a different level.
right,
That's just it. And I just think it's interesting. I'm not one of these guys that lets it hurt my feely feels and get like intimidated or like
sure.
hurt my ego. I try to learn from it and make myself better.
Yeah, yeah, no, dude, I don't think I just disagree with all that, man. I think there's like certain inherent personality traits that for sure make us better at these, at these different endeavors. Because I feel like I see the same thing amongst like, really high performing people. Um, the one thing I'll say in the context of hunting or, any of this stuff that we've been talking about, spearfishing or whatever kind of outdoor thing. Um, is I feel like that's absolutely true that there's probably a segment of people that are just it's going to be hard for somebody to match their skill set due to those personality traits whatever, but I think the majority, and I'll say this in the context of men because that's what I have, where 90% of my clients, 99% of the people I've hunted with or whatever, but the vast majority of men are in the zone of they like they're not in the zone of where that matters. Exposure therapy can increase their abilities on all this stuff massively just by repetitively doing it. You know what I mean, Dave? Like I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree with you, but most guys out there that are hunting, I think are like they're not to the zone where it matters. Does that make any sense? Like they just need to go
Keep
like
expanding on it.
well, so like you say that it's not going to be like you're not within that zone, right? Because you've been hunting elk since you're 3 years old. But most
Yeah.
guys, they think that they're going to go elk hunting for 6 days a year, once a year, maybe every once in a while they take a year off, and they think that, I mean, I've heard it 1,000 times, like, well, I've been elk hunting 15 years. It's like, okay, so you've been elk hunting 15 years for 5 or 6 days a year. Imagine if a guy came to you, Dave, and he was like, hey, dude, I've been doing, let's spar in jujitsu. I've been doing jujitsu for 15 years. I do it for 6 days every year. Sometimes I take a year off, but I've been doing it for 15 years. I think I'm pretty good. You're gonna know immediately the guy doesn't. He's not good at all because he hasn't been able to retain that much like year to year. You know what I mean?
Yes, I
So
understand what you're saying now for sure.
does that make sense? I think a lot
Yes.
of people fall into that category. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all, dude. Like on because I know the same type of guys that you're talking about, and I would say that I think we're in line. Like I don't really feel that way personally either. That I'm like the guy that in elk camp is 100% going to kill. I had a couple guides that like the way you describe Ryan, they're exactly like that. Like they were working for me, but if we ever went and did a personal hunt, like they were going to kill one before me or more consistent than me because of these personality traits. But in the spectrum of hunters, I feel like a lot of people are not like, it doesn't matter yet. They still need to get over like the
Yes.
comfort level stuff, right? Does that sorry if that was not
100%.
clear. I just
No, I totally see what you're saying. Like that analogy. I've been elk hunting for 15 years. It
yeah,
totally. What people don't realize, and this is true with everything, dude. Like you see my guitars behind me. I
yeah.
I
Well, I don't
record
see
some.
him. I don't see him, dude,
Oh,
because you
that's
took a
right.
video.
That's right. That's right.
I can imagine him though. So, sorry, dude. I didn't mean
Well,
to
like
interrupt
on the
you.
music side, like I write songs, I've recorded, I do all those things, but I'm a hobbyist on the music side.
Sure.
And people will ask me, why don't you just go for it? Why don't you just do that? Well, first of all, I don't want to because I don't want to live that lifestyle. Second of all, I'm nowhere near the level, dude. I spend time with the people that are on that level. They dedicate their
Sure.
whole life to it. They're not just doing it. They're not playing one show a month. They're playing 250 shows a year. They're writing songs
Right.
every day. They are living and breathing. I had one of the members of Zach Brown Band on this podcast,
Oh, okay.
and he was telling me Coy Coy Bowles, guitarist, really good guy. He was telling me he's never met a ultra successful musician that doesn't do it full time.
Right.
And I think that can be hard for people to hear because most of us don't have time to dedicate our life to elk hunting. But like people like Ryan Lampers or some other folks that I won't mention that are highly operating successful trophy elk hunters, they hunt all year. Like there's nothing else. They don't have a regular job. That's all they do.
Right.
So like if you hunt out in Colorado or wherever you go 5 days a year, you would have to do that for like a couple hundred years to remotely
Yeah.
come close to what they do in a year, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
so there's just levels of dedication to things, and they can learn I mean obviously I mentioned their biological traits. That's true, but also they are hunting, or at least out in the field a couple hundred days a year. And most people are like, there's no way you can do that. There is a way. When you start adding up shed hunting, mountain lion hunting, mule deer hunting, spring black bear hunting,
Sure.
off season international hunting, early season mule deer, antelope, elk, rifle season, and then we're right back to cats. Like there's guys that are doing this every day, damn near, actually more than 200 days a year. And those are the
Oh
guys
yeah. Yeah.
that they build crazy. It'd be like if I did jujitsu 200 days a year for the next 10 years. I'd be pretty, actually, I wouldn't be able to do that because I'm too old. But if I would have done that when I was 20, I'd be damn good at it now. I don't know that I'd be the best, obviously, but I'd be really fucking good at it. And
Yeah.
so
Sure.
that's that's where people forget because they look at social media, they look at the magazines. I hear this. I'm sure you've heard this as a guide and outfitter too. If I came out west, do you think like I want to hold out for a 340 bull? And I'm like, okay. First of all, stop looking at Instagram, okay? You know, you're not gonna.
Right.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
statistically not going to happen unless you pay a lot of money. Um, most
Sure.
most people need to come out west and be happy with just having a good experience and maybe getting an opportunity to raghorn. But I have a lot of friends that come out here that are beginners. They're just starting. They're not getting any opportunities, and they can't understand why. And it's because
Sure.
digitally, if you just look, it seems like everybody's successful. Everybody always kills one. I actually don't even
Right.
like scrolling through Instagram during elk season. Personally, I
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
I've almost stopped doing it because it's such a fake portrayal of elk season. Like it's, don't you
Oh,
agree?
sure. Well, yeah. Well, elk, I mean, I'm not like I shouldn't pick on elk as a species, but elk in particular, man, because I just had this discussion a couple days ago with somebody. I was actually looking for a hunt for a couple guys, trying to help them out to set one up. But anyways, even within the context that obviously social media, Instagram in particular, is a biased view of what's going on because you're only seeing people's success. The other thing is that where an elk came from and the type of hunt is like so important to, I mean, that it doesn't, it's irrelevant if you want to like judge people's skill level or whatever. That doesn't even matter to me. But in terms of like, what went into that hunt, the difficulty of it, how, if or if not it's related to the type of hunting that you're involved in at that time, is like hugely different. You know what I mean, Dave? Like
Mm-hmm.
the type of hunts is like night and day. So you also get that bias too. It's not only that you only see success on there, you also see like a bias spectrum of, I mean, there's some guys are going to have incredible access to incredible elk hunting every year, and they're going to kill two or three bulls. Could be private land, could be a combination of private land and great tags, who knows, whatever. You know what I mean? But it's
Yes.
for sure, I mean, it's not reality. And I actually, when I was outfitting, man, it was worse for me. I mean, I did a mix of different types of outfitting. I did, some private land stuff, but the vast majority of my outfitting was like pack in wilderness stuff. And it's hard, man, when you have like a lot of guys out there and you're trying to control everything that's controllable, but your weather conditions aren't good, that sort of thing. Like I could have drives, I could have 20 guys in camps and have a 4 day dry spell where nobody killed anything. You know what I mean? And like when
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at Instagram and everybody's got, you're seeing all these elk, you're like, dude, like this is hard on you. But I always had to put it in the spectrum, in the spectrum, like obviously this is biased, but also the type of hunting. I can't compare the type of hunting that we're doing to a lot of this other type of hunting. And I'm not saying good or bad. Like I could care less how people choose to hunt
Right.
elk,
Yeah.
but like for the sake of comparison, expectations, all of that, like it matters because it screws with your psyche. You
Well,
know
it
what I
does
mean?
matter because there's no context. If you're looking
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I appreciate the fact that Cameron's so open about where he hunts, and the fact
sure,
that he's legitimately done it on public land for years. Really hard. If you ever read his book Endure,
yeah, yeah,
like it's crazy. Like he's paid his dues on public land, but now he hunts really good spots and he's very open about it. Like here I am on the
yeah, sure,
reservation in Arizona. Here I am at this ranch in Colorado.
yeah,
But even though people see that, they still see him killing 4, 5, 6 points every September, and it makes them feel like they're inadequate. And it's just not an equal comparison. Not to say that if they went to that ranch, they could still do what he does because he's an incredible hunter. That's a
right,
whole nother conversation.
yeah,
But to your point, not all hunting is created equal. And I have like I hunt private land, I hunt public land. I don't really give a shit what anybody does. But
sure,
as long as it's legal and ethical, go do your thing. But for the people that are like maybe they're just like once a year elk hunters that are coming out west, they're doing their thing. You just can't compare yourself to the folks we're talking about or even anything. Don't trust anything you see online because you don't know that, like you said, you don't know the circumstances. That guy might have a great lease. That guy might have 30 years into this and just be a hell of a lot better at it than you. That guy might have drawn
oh
an
yeah,
amazing tag. Who knows? Maybe
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just I mean it's no different than anything else in life. Like don't compare yourself to other people because
oh yeah,
you don't know the context. You don't know if it's fake. You don't know if it got poached. You don't know anything. So just Go out, enjoy your experience, but also know that like real elk hunting, I should say real elk hunting, most elk hunting or anything hunting is going to be very challenging with low odds of success for the average
Sure.
guy. What you had it on your website, but I think the statistics is like 10% success on archery elk. Is that about right? 10, 15%.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, over good tag availability hunts in Colorado, the archery success is like 10, it's published 10 to 15%. Honestly, Dave, it's lower because a lot of those stats they put on there that include, you could have a unit that's got, it's X size, but it's got 150,000 acres of private on it. And,
Yeah.
60% of the bulls were killed on that private, but they're posting up a stat for the whole unit and
Hmm.
the rest of the units over the counter. So I personally think that Colorado archery success rate on public land is 5%, 5 to 10% from what I've seen.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right.
Yeah,
It's hard, man.
yeah.
It's not
Oh heck
easy,
yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
dude.
Well,
I
plus then you got to strip out the fact that there's some assassins. There's some guys that live right next to the units that kill one damn near every year. So then it's even
Mhm.
harder.
So then it's less than that. So if you were actually it'd be
Yeah.
really interesting to parse that out, to parse out the guys that are just showing up once a year. They're over the counter Colorado, and we're beating up on Colorado just because it's one of the last over the counter tags. But like
Yeah. Sure.
you're going to Colorado once a year for 5 days, 7 days. Your actual odds, to your point, if you take out the guys that live right there, that are going to kill one every year, and then if you take out the units that have those huge ranches where they have high success rates, if you take all that out, it's probably closer to like 2 or 3% success. It's
Yeah.
you know
Probably. Yeah. I mean,
like
still, it's still worth doing. Like it's an adventure, but
hell
I think
yeah,
having the right expectations about it is important for people to understand. And I think also the other thing, Dave, is like, dude, I mean, I've guided guys where I ran into this, like, and I don't mean it in like a negative context towards people, but I've had guys that went on their first guided elk hunt in a wilderness area, and they get lucky in the first day. We call in a raghorn, they kill it, and they're like, "Oh, like, man, should I have like held off?" Or like they're kind of like debating. It's like, no, dude, like, I'm in the camp like this is awesome. Like you don't understand. Like this is I don't care how big it is, dude. It's legal, and that is like phenomenal. You know what I mean? And
yes,
so I think that's a little bit lost. Like if there was a negative, a true negative to what we're talking about, I think it's an appreciation of the accomplishment of somebody, particularly with a bow, killing an elk in one of these areas. It's like most likely you went through you kind of the prerequisite during this hunt. Yeah, sure, a guy can get lucky, but most likely you did some studly stuff to kill that thing, regardless of the size of it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, dude. The trophy thing
So
is so hard. I've had a couple people approach me over the years about like this has happened twice. They wanted to start something around creating like a competition in hunting, like
okay,
a way to measure who's the best at it, right? And I've done a lot of
yeah,
deep thinking about this because generally speaking, I don't think hunting should be a competition. It's too
yeah,
for a lot of reasons.
yeah,
In reality, I do think it is in a lot of ways because just generally as humans, we're competitive and tribal and all that. But I've had a couple
yeah.
of
Of
people
course,
approach me that like want to actually formalize it. Maybe it's an business wise, they want to try to monetize it and formalize it. Like here's a scoring
yeah,
system, and I've thought about it. I'm like, I don't even know how you would do that because there's so many variables. Like I was just at the
yeah.
sheep show in Reno where you have people that are able to spend $125,000 to go on a stone sheep hunt, and they can do it. There's guys down there that are spending $1 million a year hunting, and I'm not bashing that, by the
Oh
way.
yeah,
Like, good on them. That's awesome.
yeah. If I had
Uh,
the $1,000,000, that's what I would do.
yeah, I'm not. Yeah, look. I'm not bashing it, but
No,
it is
I
true.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, man. But
No,
yeah,
no,
no,
no.
because I on this subject, Dave, like I think we have a similar feeling. So I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
But then you have the guy. Like, how do you measure? some of those successes against the guy that maybe went out and did it on public land DIY, which I hate all that. I don't like how people compare themselves like this. This is why I'm bringing it up. Um,
Sure.
to me, the right answer is you should do what you want to do as long as it's legal and ethical and enjoy it. And if you're not doing it for yourself, you're doing it to prove other people wrong or to measure your bull against this guy's bull, or this guy did it. I shot it with a recurve. This guy shot it with a compound. It's not the same. Like all these interfeudal things that happen in the hunting community. I just generally speaking have less patience for it than I used to. Um,
Sure.
I think there's some good debates that can happen on some of that stuff, but I also think that hunting just generally should not be a competition or a comparison contest. It should be it's well, literally you're killing something. You're taking something's life. So it's like
Right.
a little bit more serious matter than like a baseball game.
Right.
And secondly, there's too many variables to do that anyway. And it's such a personal, like to me, when I look around this room that I'm sitting in, my mounts, and I think about my experiences and those experiences with people and without people, to me, that's what I value the most. The mounts are just representatives of that. And someday my mounts are probably going to get sold to some freaking wedding event
Yeah. Yeah.
company in the city, like when I'm dead, and they're going to end up in the trash. That's just the reality. I know we all like
Right.
to pretend that that's not the case. That is the case. Our great grandkids are going to get rid of our shit. So they're
Yeah.
not going to care
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't have the story. They don't have the context.
No. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what does it really mean to me? What it really means to me is those adventures and those experiences with others and those experiences with myself and overcoming challenges and like it's competition with yourself. I think that's
Yeah.
personally, I think that's the healthy way to look at it. What do you think?
Yeah, so my thought on it, I think, is similar, Dave. So, and maybe I'll use an analogy of like different types of clients I've guided over the years or whatever. For me personally, the only thing that matters in all this stuff is just personal, like personal improvement, right? And for some reason, for some people, I don't think that's as important. Like, if they just go out and have fun elk hunting every year, that's what they want out of it. And I got nothing, that's fine. I don't have anything against people like that. But for me personally, I want to know that every time I go, I'm getting better at it. That could just be,
Mm-hmm.
a personal thing. That's how I judge spearfishing. That's how I judge pretty much everything that I do in the outdoors. It's like I just want to be getting better at it and learning about the species I'm hunting or the species I'm fishing for or whatever. And that's kind of how my brain is wired, and that's become a very um almost like a just like a self improvement thing that I enjoy about all these different things that we do: elk hunting, spearfishing, fishing, whatever, right? So to me, that's how I personally judge it. I think most people who have been in the hunting world for very long, or they've done much hunting, they come to the same conclusion. The reality is that there's no way to judge, this guy versus that guy in terms of their skill set by the overt output, right? And you brought up Cam. I think Cam, like reading his book, seeing his social media, I think he's very self. I mean, I don't know him. Yeah, I'm acquainted with him, but I've never had this discussion with him or anything. But I get a feeling that he's like fairly self conscious of this because he understands that dynamic, right? He even kind of almost directly addresses it in his book, that like yeah, of course it's different. Every hunt's different, and therefore the overt results don't really say anything of like where we're lining up on the in the hunting world. We're never going to know who like the Michael Jordan of hunting is or whatever, and it doesn't matter. I think I have through the guiding deal. I'll be honest with you on this. There's a certain type of hunter that I, you know, I didn't enjoy guiding as much as other hunters. And a lot of these guys I guided over lots of different hunts. And there's a certain type of hunter who you would hunt with, and they had like great stories of like they went on this adventure, that adventure. And hey man, did you know this about, like, dude, I went bongo hunting in Africa. Like, did you know this about the area? Did you know this about the bongo? Like all this stuff that I find interesting because I'm a dork. Like I always felt like those hunters like really grew a passion in this, and they also tend to be like pretty good hunters because they were just like they're going on hunts and they were learning stuff every time they went on hunts. I always loved guiding those guys. The guys that were a little bit harder for me and I didn't connect with as much, and I don't think grew as hunters as much, were guys where, you know, we'd kill a ram, and then like literally, you know, while I was caping the ram, they were on the sat phone to get their, you know, their airplane to come pick them up, you know, that afternoon, right? Like
Mm.
they just wanted, you know, they like mission accomplished. Like I want to show everybody this ram and on to the next hunt. To me, that wouldn't be all that enjoyable. To me, there's not much depth to that. I don't whatever, people can do that. I don't have a, like you said, like as long as it's ethical and legal, that's fine. But but yeah, so there's different ways people go on this, but my feeling is like I just I do want to improve at it constantly, you know, and iterate on it and get better at it. So I don't know if that
Yeah,
answers your
there's
question,
two
but
there's two
that's how I
things
think
that you
about it.
said there that really resonate with me, and I think you're right. You hit it on the head. Is like, for example, from for me, I would shoot the first bull that would walk by me for years, and a lot of that was because I hunted with a traditional bow. And when you hunt with a traditional bow, you're not going to be an
Sure.
effective trophy hunter. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But when I switched to a compound and the weapon became a bit easier, I decided that I was going to start upping my game on the trophy, like my standards trophy wise, because I, I know that because of the skills that I developed with my recurve, that I can pretty much always any year go kill a raghorn if I want to. Like if I'm out of meat, I can spend a few days out and get something like that. But I wanted to push myself,
Sure.
and that required me having the mindset. It's like, nope, I have this standard, and if I don't get anything, I'm okay with that. But it wasn't to prove anything to anybody else. It was to prove to myself that I can get better at this. So that was number one. That really resonates with me. I think that's why it's competing with yourself is really healthy. Competing with others in hunting, I think that's a slippery slope. And here's the other thing I've noticed, because I know so many people that do this.
Sure.
It's a slope. It's a slippery slope that never ends, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you kill a big bull that's bigger than this guy that you don't like. First of all, that guy doesn't care what you do, and you don't care what he does. You don't like him.
Yeah.
So let's just play it out. You kill a bigger bull than that guy, so you feel good because I stuffed it to him. Then the next year he kills a bigger one. He stuffed it to you. Then the next year
Right.
you killed. Like, where does this end? And then even if you do
Yeah.
beat
Yeah.
him, that if you, let's just say I kill a bigger bull than this guy I don't like. Well, he's over there saying, yeah, he killed that bull, but he was doing this and that, like this and that. Like he's never going to accept the fact that you beat him, because that's not his personality. So it's this like constant bullshit spiral, and it there's
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
I'll just tell people it's unwinnable. It's never been won, and it never will be won. The only way that you'll ever be happy is by just competing with yourself. Because my
Sure.
dad told me this when I was growing up. My dad always told me, no matter how tough you are, there's always somebody tougher. So apply that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
whatever sport you're really into, hunting, whatever. No matter how good of a hunter you are, someday there's going to be somebody that's better than you, and then someday there's going to be, and then someday you're going to be irrelevant. I'm going to be irrelevant. You're going to be irrelevant. Everybody's going to be irrelevant. So you better have enjoyed it. Otherwise, you just wasted a whole lifetime competing with people you don't even like about something that doesn't even actually matter. You're going to lay in your deathbed and be
Yeah.
like, "Geez, that was a big waste." The second point that you made that I liked and I agree with is collectors, and they can do whatever they want. I know a lot of these people. I'm friends with them. It's just not my bag. Like
Sure.
I don't need to harvest every species on the planet, or like do this or that slam. Doesn't really. It's never resonated with me at all. But again, that's
Yeah.
my personal thing. There's a lot of people that love that. Um, I was just talking to a guide at Sheep Show that said they had a hunter that paid, I don't know, 100 grand for a sheep hunt, 125 grand for a stone sheep hunt. And they called him before the hunt, and they said that I want to fly in, shoot the sheep, and fly out. I don't want to be there more than a day. Can you accommodate
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And like, total honesty, I think that's gross. But that's just my opinion. That's
Yeah.
just my
Sure.
opinion.
Yeah.
The guy can do
Yeah.
it. That's his prerogative. I think that's kind of gross, personally. That's a little bit over the line for me. But
Yeah,
anyways,
it's what's interesting to me, Dave. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just don't know why. You know what I mean? Like you're not like my opinion on it, and I've dealt with almost the exact scenario before, and it's like why? Like why? Like if I have if I have an extra 50, 100 grand to spend on hunting, like I want to go do. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't spend that kind of money. You know what I mean? In a different stage of my life, or maybe when I don't have kids and all these other responsibilities, I probably will. You know what I mean? Like I have no problem with the amounts of money because a lot of people just cringe at that. But to me, it's like if I'm gonna spend that kind of money, it's gonna be about the adventure, man. Like I don't give a shit about the ram's head. I really don't. I mean, I obviously there's a part of me that's I have an ego and I'm in a
mhm.
world of hunters. So to show people like this big elk I killed or this big ram, like obviously that's cool and that's part of sharing the memory with people. But dude, if I'm spending that kind of money, I'm spending it on like epic adventures, not like flying in one day, whacking something and flying out. To me, it's just irrational, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it's just, but I think they're just collecting. They're just
Yeah, yeah,
that guy. I don't know who the guy was, but let's just say he's got a 10,000 square foot trophy room at his complex. He's going to go throw that ram in there so he can show his buddies and whatever.
sure.
To each their own. But that to me doesn't necessarily make sense in my brain because I'm like
Yeah,
you.
no, I get it.
I actually regret. I've only done one sheep hunt, but my sheep hunt, I shot my ram on the third day of a stone sheep hunt, and
Oh, okay.
on a 10-day hunt. And I don't regret shooting the ram, and I don't regret the trip. I do wish we would have stayed a couple more days, just enjoying the scenery. Maybe I could have talked them into letting me shoot a caribou or something.
Sure.
But I was back in town after 4 days, and I'm like, shit, that was
Yeah.
awesome. I want to go back. and
Sure.
now I'll probably never get to go back. So there are those adventures are fleeting, man. And I know we all like to pretend that every time we go, we're going to get to do it again, but that's just simply not always true. I mean, I hope it's true, but someone was telling me the other day, oh, it might have been Lampers. He's recently become infatuated with Alaska moose,
Oh, okay.
and he goes because I think he's like 50 or so. He's like, I just don't know how many years I have left of packing moose quarters, so I got to do it every year. But like,
Right.
I don't know how old you are. I'm 43. I have some great years ahead, God willing. But also, I can't do this forever. So all of these, especially the more extracurricular adventures, like a stone sheep hunt or a maybe I draw some crazy tag or whatever, you may actually never get to do that again. So the fact that you would want to
Yeah.
fly in for a day and come home, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's something that I literally may never stand on that. Well, I know I won't stand on that dirt again where that sheep was. I'll never see that country again. Like that, if you think about it that way, it'll make you treat the adventure a little bit differently, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I think you nailed it with that, man. Because it's actually more likely than not you're gonna in most of these cases that you're gonna do it again. You know what I mean? Or it's more likely that you're not gonna do it than it's is if you're gonna do it again. You know what I mean? So yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah, that's pretty. That could be kind of a morbid thought, dude. You know?
Yeah, it's funny. I've guided a lot of mountain goat hunts over the years. Like for a while, it was
Hmm.
like kind of like it got to be my thing. Like where I was, and they're usually shorter hunts in Colorado just because of the logistics, or you don't have to be like long duration backpack hunts. So there was years where I guided like I don't know 5, 6 of them in one September, and
Hmm.
that species I always feel that way about, man. Like I love and hate hunting them. Like I like hunting them, but some of the terrain they're in, like it's almost like as I've gotten older, it scared me more. It has like scared me more to realize like, oh yeah, like totally could die doing this or whatever. But
Hmm.
outside of that, there's the idea that, oh yeah, this is the species that's the first to go. You know what I mean, Cliff? Like there will be a time, and I'm similar age to you. There will be a time like, you know, probably less than 2 decades where I won't be doing this anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's the first one to go just because physically a lot of the terrain, like just, I've guided lots of older guys and any people can argue whatever they want, but even a 70-year-old who's a freaking stud, he has a hard time, chasing mountain goats because just like balance and all that little things, it matters a lot,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that species tells me a lot about like it's the one that I guess hits me more on like the mortal like my own mortality, right? Because I realized like, oh yeah, that's the
Hmm.
first one to go, you know. So it's
For
kind of
sure.
interesting.
And I don't know if you ever do this, but sometimes I think about that and I'm like, okay, just take September, for example. So I'm 43. The average male lifespan, I think, is in the 70s, 73, 74,
Yeah,
75, something like that. So let's just say I live an average life. That gives me 30 more Septembers. And then you boil that down to how many days on average I get to hunt in September. And then you boil that down further to how many days are actually good hunting, like rut
right.
fest. Like,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
that blew my mind. And it's usually, let's just call it 2 or 3 days a season. So that means that if I live an average lifespan with an average elk season every year, that means that I have, let's just call it 15 to 30 more amazing days of elk hunting left.
yeah,
Or no, maybe more than that. It'd be like 50 days of amazing elk hunting left. Dude, if you start thinking about it like that,
yeah,
you'll want to cherish them a lot more. I do the same thing, exercise with my kids. My daughter's 12 years old. That means in 6 years, she's going to freaking college. How many? So that means we have 6 summers left. And out of every summer, I get to actually spend with her this many weekends. And so you start doing the math on that stuff. It's like crazy, man, how fleeting all of it is. And it just can't be wasted.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's really, dude. You could get into like this really. Oh, dude, you can get like we could talk about it for freaking 3 hours, Dave. But you can get into this whole thing because people always ask me about like my lifestyle and spearfishing here, and then I do a lot of hunting. You do a lot of hunting, so people ask you too, like well how do you build like a life around that, or like do you feel like it affects like your family life and your economics and all that? And it's like yeah, for sure it does, but it's like a choice that I make. I got, sacrifices this way and that way. But then the thing is that like what you're talking about rings in my mind. It's like, well, like where's this happy medium? Because for me personally, like I I mean my family and then my all my outdoor stuff is like the most important. And then my economic component of my existence, my career, all that is just like a responsibility. You know what I mean? I like being an entrepreneur and all that, but that's secondary to those two things in my life. And so it's like you have to think to yourself like, oh, there's like this constant real life trade-off going on, right? Like anybody that says that going hunting a lot is not taking away from the time they spend with their kids, it's just like it's a mathematical fallacy, right? Or anybody that says, oh well, you're going you can go hunting a lot and then you can still have a business and a thriving business. Like yeah, you can, but there's still a trade-off. So you make these trade-offs, and it's interesting because I've got like in the guiding context, man, I've guided a lot of people who are like crazy successful, billionaires, 100 millionaire, 2, 3, 4, 500 million dollars. And you sitting somewhere in some middle of nowhere place and you're talking to these people about this dynamic. And you realize that they're questioning what they have done with their time in life, right? Like they're big hunters, they're big fishermen, whatever, and they're like the apex of what they're doing. And they're not saying that their choice of where to allocate time was wrong, but they're still questioning it, right? And they hit it huge. So it's always something that I think about all the time, man. And I don't know the right answer because everybody's different.
I think about that all the time too. I own a real estate business and I deal with a lot of high net worth individuals. And um, I've definitely met a couple that got to towards the end of their life and they're like, I don't know, they almost just seem kind of not like, let's just say they spent their entire life just making money. Like that was their number
You're
one
right.
priority. Because I do know a few like that. They don't seem very happy to me at the end of life. They seem like they're like, well, now, like, what the hell am I going to do with all that shit now? I just created a bunch of complications, and now I'm too old to spend it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I think what you're saying, I don't remember the book, but my wife and I listened to a book one time on a road trip, and the book was all about how time is currency. Like, we all talk about money, but if I choose to do thing A instead of thing B, like, that's a choice, because you're taking in order to do anything, you have to take energy from something else. So, dude, I struggle with this as like a serial entrepreneur all the time. I really do. Like,
Sure.
how do I balance running multiple businesses, raising three kids, being a husband, being a son, a brother, and also hunting as much as I want to, and doing the other hobbies that I have too. Like, how does all that balance out? But I think my general perception, my opinion, I don't know. We'll see if I'm right or not. But I think time, time to do the things that bring you joy is much more valuable than money. But most of the time, you have to have money to do those things. So, like, there's this constant tug of war that goes on.
Oh yeah.
But I do think it's possible to have both. I do.
Oh yeah.
And I look at people, and I know you've been on Rogan's podcast. I look at people like Joe, right? Joe is extremely wealthy, but also seems like he's extremely happy because he spends his time doing the things that bring him joy. And
Right.
instead of, like, he could be trying to make a lot more money, but the funny thing is he inevitably ends up making a lot more money just by doing the things that bring him joy, as opposed to becoming like a serial angel investor, or like buying up real estate everywhere. He's not doing that. He's like opening a comedy club, pumping out 2 podcasts, 3 podcasts a week, doing the UFC. Like, I think
Yeah.
that, to me, is the model. To me, it's like, how do you make money and then spend it? Well, obviously, take care of your responsibilities, one, but then two, spend it bringing joy to yourself, which then brings joy to your family and your friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense, man. Um, and I like the whole discussion is like always. I always feel like hesitant to talk about it, Dave, because my personal opinion is there's a lot of men our age and younger who I guess in some maybe maybe there's components of productivity and everything else and work ethic or whatever. Like I don't know, but I do think that there's like a tendency to like not take care of yourself and not have like personal dreams and to you want to go on like you're embarrassed because like if somebody I mean I've had guys that like they want to do the grand slam, right? They want to go sheep hunting, they want to do the grand slam, which whatever, it's all good. And they're like embarrassed to discuss it with me. It's like, dude, why are you embarrassed to discuss it? It's a goal that you personally have, and your family and all of that. As long as you're taking care of your responsibilities, you shouldn't be embarrassed about having those goals. I think there's magic. You bring up Joe as an example. I think he's found some magic in doing the overlap, right? Like I think he really enjoys that podcast. I think he enjoys like the things that he spends a lot of his time on. Um, but we're all different, man. And within the context of that example, like, dude, I message him all the time, like, hey, dude, you want to go axis deer hunting? Come down here to Caribbean. Like, he was down in the Caribbean. I'll message you, and his schedule's too busy. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because obviously he's making his own trade offs. But if I had the it's like a chicken and egg thing, right? Like I'm probably never gonna be Joe Rogan because I'm spending more time in more of like my the equity I could build or the asset base or whatever. I'm spending that more on these things. And I think at least for me, I've always battled with like that, but it's just a reality, right? Like I mean, believe me, if somebody calls me up and they're like, "Hey, man, like, and this happens to me down here all the time. Like, hey, I'm in St. Thomas. You want to go marlin fishing?" And I like barely know him. I know him from Instagram. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in." You know what I mean? And that's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily a great trait, but it's like a reality of
Yeah,
the
it is,
personality.
dude.
You know what I mean?
That's no, dude, just say yes. Look,
Yeah, yeah,
I just told somebody last week that if I died today, I really believe that I'm a filthy rich person, not monetarily. I'm comfortable monetarily. I pay my bills. I take care of my family. We live in a
sure,
modest house. But I've almost lived every dream I ever dreamed of. And to
sure.
me, how many people can say that? And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I made it a priority and I've done it. Now I have a lot of new ones that I want now. But
Yeah, yeah, of course.
my point is like I would rather die rich in that way than with a bunch of, because here's the dude. One of the things I've learned in real estate is I don't know what the percentage is. There's a lot of transactions we handle from kids, grandkids, and great grandkids that are fighting over grandpa's assets.
Oh, sure.
It's more likely than not that if let's just say you do get filthy rich, there's a lot of pain, family pain that comes with that somewhere down the line. I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not preventable, but it does happen almost every time. Somewhere down the line after
yeah,
you die, it creates more problems than you would have wanted. And if you could come back to life, maybe be like, you know what, kids, sorry, I'm not leaving this
yeah, yeah,
because I see the future and it's going to make you guys not like each other. And it's more important for me for you guys to like each other than for me to give you $1 million. So
yeah,
like I struggle with that too. Not, I don't really have to worry about it right now because if I died today, I wouldn't leave my kids a lot other than a bunch of racks and pictures and videos and stuff like that. But I do think about that because I see it all the time, especially with property. There's something about property that brings a lot of, I mean, brings tons of joy to people and
oh, sure.
experiences and adventures. But eventually, generationally, there are some painful things it brings too. So like, I don't know how to deal with that or what. It's beyond my pay grade, but I do think about that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, and it's interesting because the perception is while you're living, you're doing everyone a giant favor.
Yeah.
Everybody anybody who's, really wealthy who, that I've dealt with always has the perception of like, well, my kids will never have to work. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a novel goal. Like I totally get it. Um, and yeah, I don't know what the answer to all of that is, man, but I can tell you one thing, man. If you want to, I don't know a whole lot. Here's what I'll I guess like in that topic, Dave. My thoughts on it is like I know many people who are late 40s, 50, in that realm who right now, I mean, and some of them are on social media and like they're people who everybody know, but in private conversations they'll tell you like, dude, I got to catch up on all this fun crap that you and all these other people have been doing because like I blew it in my 30s and 40s because I was like stuck building this or that, right? And then the problem is that like it's like, well, now you say that, right? They have that with hindsight and now they have the resources to go hunting, go fishing all the time. So it's just like a hard way to answer it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's hard because none of us actually know what the right answer is. So you just got to
Yeah,
do
yeah, of course.
you got to do
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
right
yeah.
for yourself. But I tend to live
Yep.
more like you, man. Like I was literally right before we got on this podcast, I was literally just randomly going to book my wife and I a trip to. I can't say on the podcast because it's going to be a secret to her. But
Yeah, I got you.
do I have the 2 or 3 grand to book the trip? Yeah, I guess kinda. But should I spend that money? Probably not. Will I spend the
Yeah.
money? Most likely, because
Yeah,
I don't know. I value that adventure. I'm always been like you, dude. I always say yes before I think through it, and sometimes it bites me in
yeah,
the
yeah.
butt. But a lot of times it's paid off, and you and I have got to live some amazing adventures, dude. I got to ask you. It says on your website you used to be like a financial trader.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Do you
early
miss?
20s.
Obviously, you don't miss that lifestyle. Otherwise, you wouldn't have left it, or you'd have gone back to it at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean there's aspects of it. There's aspects of it that I miss. Um but overall, no, man. I mean, the biggest thing for me is just like a block and tackling thing, really, Dave, is that I can't live in an urban environment. I didn't grow up in one. During
Hmm.
those years, I did live in one. Um, and I just that was probably the biggest thing for me. But there's things I miss about like the like intense like intellectual stimulation of that. I mean, now it's been a while, man. We're talking about like my early 20s. Um,
Hmm.
so I there's aspects of that I miss, like in the kind of like intense competition that's within it. I hate, or dude, honestly, man, like all the things I like about it were like the toxic masculinity that used to rule that world.
I've
Those are
seen the Big Short,
I'll be
man.
honest, that's what I liked about it, you know what I mean? So, I don't mean like
Well,
I don't mean like the crappy, like the shitty things that are in that world, but I mean more like just the competition and the
yeah.
competitive nature of it.
Well, I mean, look, dude, you were in your early 20s. So it's probably a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fun, like, if you're going to live that world, you need to do it in your early 20s because trying to do it now would be probably
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
tiring.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, no.
what, okay, second random question I got to ask you. Tell me about these iguanas.
Sure.
So on your
So,
Instagram, I'm actually gonna pull this. Can I do that? Oh shoot, I don't think I can. There's a video on your Instagram of you gathering up like 15 iguanas, like out of like an irrigation ditch or something, and then cooking them
oh,
up.
yeah, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
well, this is before I knew that you lived in Puerto Rico part of the year. But then I was like, where in the hell is this?
Yeah, so they're invasive to South Florida, and then they're invasive to I think they're invasive to the entire Caribbean.
Hmm.
But they're all over the place, man. Like if I took my computer outside and looked in my backyard, I'm sure there's iguanas. Um, so we just hunt them with air rifles. Like, are you familiar with what they call them, PCP air rifles? Um, they're
Like
like they're like a
the little
20.
plastic bead things.
These are like they're PCP stands for pre-charged pneumatic air rifles. I mean,
Okay.
they shoot pellets at like 1,000 feet per second. You know what I
Oh
mean, or
wow.
900 feet per second. Like you if you get hit with one in it, within a reasonable distance, like it kill you. You know what I mean?
Okay. Uh
Um,
huh.
but so they're like they're pretty amazing technology. But we hunt them with those, and yeah, we eat them. They're fine. They're it's so funny. Like I read the comments on there, like everybody's like, oh, like look, this guy's gonna start COVID-25. Like, it's
That's
there's nothing wrong.
fantastic.
There's nothing wrong with eating them, and they're fun. I mean, it's a super target rich environment. So there's two areas that they kind of raise hell, Dave. That's like anytime people are talking about invasive species, like you do have to question, like, well, like where are they doing like significant harm, right? And with iguanas, it's kind of hard to see that like day to day, but anywhere like around water, like developed water, like you saw in that picture, that was like a developed water system. They burrow in like behind the concrete and stuff and cause all sorts of havoc.
Uh
And the other
huh.
thing is they eat bird eggs, so they're hell
Oh,
on like native birds, but they're all over the place, dude. It's like, I mean, it's not you could go to a lot of places and kill like 100 in 3 hours. You know what I mean?
really? Are they good to
Yeah,
eat? Do they actually taste good?
yeah, they taste fine. They're good. I mean, have you ever had like they're most similar to alligator, alligator, frog legs, that sort of thing. They're real similar to that. They taste fine, man, and to give you the whole spiel on iguanas, because people always ask like, well, are they safe to eat? And the thing
Uh-huh.
about them is they're vegetarian, right? So in terms of parasites and that sort of thing, they're low risk, just like most vegetarian animals are. And then but they will carry salmonella. So a lot of people who have had pet iguanas, they'll say, oh, like you can get salmonella for them. It's like, well, yeah, you can also get salmonella from any store bought chicken. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you treat them like chicken. Like you don't eat them sashimi or anything like that, right? Like you got to cook them.
Mm-hmm.
They're good to eat, man. I'm surprised. Like the culture here in Puerto Rico is to not. They don't eat a lot of them. But there's places that they eat a ton of them. The thing, dude, my personal belief is that the reason they don't get consumed a lot is you have to know how to clean them, and if it's not easy. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't say it's not easy. It's easy if you know how to do it, but if you don't know how to do it, they're like their skin is like it's like armor plating. You know what I mean? So you gotta know how to clean them. And the thing is, it's like you also have to get over the idea. And I think this is like a just an interesting subject in general when it comes to hunting. You kind of have to get over the idea of like where the usable meat is on them, the tail. So like basically you could have a freaking 6 foot iguana and the base of the tail, like this much of the tail, and then its hindquarters, that's all the meat. There's not, the rest of them is like, I mean, I'm not saying it's not edible, but the effort versus like meat retention is like it's almost like nothing. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
you gotta get their hindquarters off, get the tail off, and just that's what you get.
That's crazy. So you can have guns, air guns in Puerto Rico? Like, what's the rules around guns there?
Yeah, so the reason so the gun rules here are kind of interesting, particularly in the context of like the legal structure of Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico's the US, you know what I mean? But it has some on like the gun side of things, it has some unique regulations. Like it's stricter, right? Like you can own you I mean, you in the end you can have pretty much all the same type of guns, but it's more controlled. Like you gotta get licenses, getting the ammo is a pain in the ass, all that. So for most of the hunting stuff down here, people use PCP, these PCP air guns, because they're not considered a firearm. So I can just throw them in my luggage, take them anywhere in the states. I can, so they're easy to deal with that way. I can throw them in a box, send them UPS back home to
No
the
way.
states. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So they're
That's
just like
crazy.
they're a convenient workaround for that. And then obviously you're hunting iguanas. I mean, even like you can kill feral goats with them. You can kill feral pigs with them. There's pig hunting down here too, Dave. It's pretty hilarious because like since the hurricane, there's there's like there's wild pigs everywhere, but they look like farm pigs. You know what I mean? Like they're like, and there's like pot belly, like there's whole little herds of, like pot belly wild pigs down here,
Oh,
like little
really?
little fat little pot belly pig. Yeah, it's just like a different world. I don't for the pigs like I don't. I mean, I don't mind hunting them and stuff. You got to be real careful about consuming them because there's a lot of population on these islands, and those pigs are eating people's garbage and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yucky. Were
you
there?
gotta be
You mentioned the
careful.
hurricane. What? There was wild pigs obviously before the hurricane. You're just saying there's more now because people's pigs got out.
Yeah, I think that like up the population and got like a bunch of micro populations all over the island. The
Uh huh.
crazy thing, dude, the crazy thing is like there's so from my backyard here, if you look out, you can see Vallecas, which is a big Puerto Rican island, and then you can see St. Thomas, you can see part of the BVI, like all you can see all these islands, and some of them have whitetail on them. It's like people
Really?
don't realize, yeah, dude, there's whitetail down here in the Caribbean. Like I was on one of these little islands out here. It's actually pretty funny because they call it yeah, have you ever seen the documentary I think it's called Cocaine Island?
Uh
Have you
uh.
have you seen that? It's on Netflix. It's freaking hilarious, dude. It's about this guy. Uh-oh, dude. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, my power went off. I got a generator on my other stuff, so it didn't kick us off. But I what I was gonna say is that there's a documentary about a guy who used to like. Anyways, it's I think it's called Cocaine Island, but it's about this island, and it's plenty safe now and stuff. But anyways, on that island that documentary slash shows about, there's whitetail on that island, which is pretty cool.
That's
I
crazy.
don't know. And I guess the military guys back in the day, they used to have a big Air Force base down here. They
Uh
brought
huh.
down whitetail, turned them out, like thinking like, who knows if they'll make it. It's the Caribbean, and they're all over that island.
Whitetail are pretty durable.
Yeah, it must be, dude. It's a totally different climate than where I've seen them.
What other hunting is there down the Caribbean?
I mean, there's not a lot, man. So you got iguanas. You've got some of the islands have feral goats on them. You got the pig thing, real like limited around. That's pretty much it. That's kind of more like fun novel stuff. The or novelty stuff. The big hunting opportunity in the Caribbean's the is spearfishing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
anybody who's going to spend like a significant amount of time here and they're like a hunter, outdoorsman, whatever,
Hmm.
I'd be like, I mean, the land stuff's fun, but it's the ocean is where it's at. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because dude, it's almost like there's aspects of the ocean that really like to our original conversation, Dave, that like amaze me because it's kind of like how I imagine you know, guys going, west the first time in the States and like kind of being exposed to this environment that, that wasn't heavily, wasn't like parsed up into a million different units and how it is now. There's just like, I don't know, like it's like I almost feel like there's more freedom in the ocean and there's like just so like endless amount of adventures, right? Like you can go spear on reefs, you can go blue water fishing, you can go lobster diving, certain areas and limited seasons you can still conch dive. Like there's a lot of little different things you can do. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um and so it's fun. It's fun that way. I think that's the real opportunity down here. The hunting's just kind of like I don't know. It's like a kind of a little bit of a sideshow, I guess. Not I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's still fun, but it's pretty like low key hunting.
Well, somebody ought to kick some axis deer out down there. They probably do pretty well.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
kidding.
not
Kidding.
yeah, not me. But when you go around here, dude, it's crazy because you look at you're like, man, dude, if they ever got access deer, they'd be out of control. You
Oh,
know
they
what I
would
mean?
certainly be out of control. Yeah, I'm just kidding. All you
Yeah.
people out there that are
No, no,
like,
no, yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah. No, it'd be
don't do
it
it.
it. Yeah. Well, dude, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the whitetail never showed up on the main island. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, there's different. It's funny, man, because like there's different islands around here, and then all the Caribbean's like so everything. Like right now, I'm closer to Venezuela than I am Florida. You know what I mean? It's like hard. Like the geography to me, I always forget that. And like between me and Florida, you got Haiti, the DR, like you've got all that. And the other side, you've got all the British Virgin Islands, but then you got Barbados going down, and all these different little islands, man. Like most of them over the years, like the pirates or the guys coming down here to trade or whatever, they put goats on them, they put pigs on them. Like a lot of that stuff's like there's little remnant populations that you hear about in places,
Hmm.
and they're still around. So there's little
I,
opportunities, but go ahead.
I guess I didn't realize that it was that far south. Yeah, you're south of Cuba. You're
Yeah,
south of
yeah, South Cuba. Yeah,
Dominican
yeah, no,
Republic. That's
y-
crazy.
yeah, the
I have
history of
spent
history
zero
is crazy.
time in the Caribbean. Zero. I've been going to Hawaii my whole life, and then the kind of the Gulf side of Mexico or the Pacific side of Mexico.
Yeah,
Um,
sure,
I've never been to the Caribbean. I want to. I just haven't done
sure.
it.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting place, and every little island's different, right? So you have different culture around the ocean. You've got you got different racial culture. It's
Hmm.
interesting. Like every little spot is different, and I don't know, Dave. I've tried to pinpoint this, man. The Caribbean, the at least I can like one like down here at least from a wildlife resource perspective, the fishing, the spearfishing, the hunting, all that stuff, um it's way less developed. So it's way less developed than compared to Hawaii, dude. It's like it's not even, I mean, there's way less competition in those worlds, and there's way less commercialization. I think there's like a
Hmm.
thousand different variables why that is, and it even compared to Baja, it's the same way. It's way less commercially developed than those places. I don't know the exact pinpoint reason why, but
Huh.
it's interesting that way.
Interesting. Yeah, that's what I imagine it to be, and that's actually one of the reasons I do want to go there. I love Hawaii. One things I was going to ask you about is I kind of have. Well, me and my wife plan on being snowbirds once the kids are out of the
No,
house.
okay,
We're planning on being in Hawaii from like probably just after New Year's to about May 15th.
no,
Um,
okay,
I just don't have much tolerance for winter anymore, and
sure,
I've watched my dad struggle with it his whole life, and I just don't want to do that. So
yeah,
dude, I love. Okay, so I'm separating hunting from like actual living. Like I love hunting in a snowstorm or going out when it's crazy weather. That just adds to the adventure. But once I'm at
sure,
home and like living my life, I don't actually enjoy winter at all. It's just
yeah,
it's not. I don't need it. I don't need to be in the snow anymore. Lived in Montana, good. Seen a lot of snow. I could totally be fine from January to May in the tropics and be totally happy as long as there's hunting and fishing and stuff for me to do there. Which
right,
in
yeah,
Hawaii in Hawaii I have plenty of that. But
yep.
I love the model of how you're living in um, homeschooling the kids. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, man. I don't have any complaints about it. It's like anything, right? Like it's got its pros and cons, you know. And
Yeah.
a lot of people ask me about it, and that's like that's like the first thing I say about it is like, look, like you gotta like understand the cons of it, and you gotta make sure that that's viable for you. You know what I mean?
What are the
Um,
cons?
and well, so the cons are like, so some people would, with kids, you have like the homeschool component, but you also have the component of like, are they building up friend groups,
Hmm.
that are similar to like what you had as a kid, that
Hmm.
sort of thing. So I think that could be a con. There's obviously just a con of expense, right? Like regardless of how you're doing it, your cost of living is gonna go up a little bit. That depends on a
Yeah.
bunch of different variables. Um,
Hmm.
I think the other one, and this is be relevant to like the style that you're doing, and that's like for you, and like for me too, like Colorado, like I have family in Puerto Rico, so it makes sense for me to do it here.
Mm.
But like the travel from here to the West Coast is miserable, dude. Like
Oh,
it's a long ways. You know what I
yes.
mean?
Yes.
Like what's your a trip to Hawaii from you is like 4 hours or something like that?
It's six.
Yeah, so like even at 6, man, like for me to get back to Oregon is I mean it's like a 10-hour ordeal. You know what I mean? Like it's enough to
Hmm.
really mess you up. So the travel gets you a little bit. So those are
Hmm.
like your bigger cons. I mean the other cons are like very simple things, Dave, like like healthcare, right? Like where do you have a doctor? Where do you keep your dentist? If you're
Ah.
living
Hmm.
if you're living somewhere where the perceived or reality of the quality of those things,
Hmm.
that's relevant. Those little things like that,
For
um
sure.
those sort of things. So it's just those are like administrative complications that you have to
Dude,
think about.
when you have kids, having family nearby is so
Oh
nice.
yeah, yep,
So that's why we moved back to Oregon from Bozeman, and I did not want to leave Bozeman. I was drug out of there. No, I agreed to it, obviously, but
yeah,
uh,
sure,
I loved it there, and luckily, I still get to go back a lot because I have a business there. But uh, now I'm like so glad we did it because the kids get to see their grandparents all the time, and we have support. Like if I have to go out of town, we got grandmas nearby. They love coming. That family
right.
support, and we have a ton of friends that don't have family around, and they're like, God, we're so jealous. We have to get babysitters and this and that. I'm like, yeah, man. And my mom and her mom love coming to see the kids, so we can go on a date night. That's no problem. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so
no,
I
that's
yeah,
huge, man.
and the doctor dentist thing that makes sense. The other thing is with the kids, yeah, like the friendship thing's so hard because making friends for them at this age and keeping relationships and going through those struggles, that's all a lot of drama anyway. It's already hard, but dividing it up between two places makes it probably a lot harder.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing too, dude, because like, well, it's funny. I don't know how you were raised, Dave, but like when I was a kid, it was kind of like homeschool kids were. It's this culture has changed quite a bit because now there's more people doing it. But it used to be when I was a kid that like homeschool kids were weirdos. You know what I mean? That's like kind of how
Mm-hmm.
we perceived them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so now, now that my kids are homeschooled, it's interesting to see that dynamic because one they have a lot of exposure to other homeschool kids and they have a lot of friendships that way. So I think there's less issues socially, but
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because and I don't know if this is a pro con, doesn't matter, but they're with you all the time. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
there's aspects of that I think are huge pluses, right? Like
Right.
we're always together, but then there's also there's things about that can be a little bit like difficult. Like if my wife wants to go to CrossFit and I'm working in my home office, well the kids are my responsibility, right? It's not like they're
Right.
at school getting like getting educated, but also in a sense getting
Right.
babysat, right? So there's that challenge, but I don't know, man. It's a hard one because I grew up in a way that we moved around a lot too. Like we were kind of uprooted a bunch of different times, and I was when I was growing up, and I don't know, dude. Like, it's like, well, did that make me stronger, better for it, or did that screw me up socially? I don't know. Like, I look at my kids, and this is self-serving, man, because like part of the reason we homeschool our kids is so me and my wife can live a certain lifestyle, right? Like, I'm not like denying that,
Mm-hmm.
but there is an aspect of me is like, man, dude, my kids get to live like a really cool childhood, you know?
Yes.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, right? Like it's kind of like the other topics we discussed. You're probably not going to know until like the outcome arises, you know what I mean? But you can do your best along the way.
I tend to agree with you, man. I tend to agree with you. A lot of that stuff to me, it's like your kids are going to appreciate that. Plus, your kids are getting exposed to the rest of the world. One of the things I loved growing up in a small country town, like I wouldn't trade it. But the
Sure.
best thing I ever did was get the hell out of there because what it taught me is that there's places besides where you grow up, and there's people besides the people that you see every day, and there's things to learn. Like I mean, an unlimited amount of things to experience, and it just made me a better person. And so we're trying
Yeah,
to
sure.
travel. We're trying to travel more with our kids, and I think someday they're going to appreciate it. I do think it's going to give them a better point of view on the world itself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. I also hope I hate to say it because I don't want to like you don't want to like put your kids through like hardship. But for my kids, I sometimes I feel like it's like, man, if it's like moving around all the time, like dealing with dad's bullshit puts a little chip on their shoulder. I don't know if it's a bad thing.
Yeah, that dude. I don't know. You kind of got to have a chip on your shoulder
That's
a
like the
little
most
bit.
selfish that's like the most selfish thing a guy could say. But there's a part of me, if I'm
No,
being
dude, you
honest.
got to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder to survive. I mean, dude, survival of the fittest. Life is hard and competitive, and trust me, like it just is. Like we're all, you got to. You're bringing up little soldiers, man, that are going into battle. Life is a battle. Everything
Yeah.
about it, it's hard. It's freaking hard, dude.
No, yeah.
Dude, I really have enjoyed this conversation, and we need to meet in person. I've never seen you anywhere. I don't think. Have we met before?
No, I don't think we have, man.
It'd be fun to
I
fun
try
to get
to
together and do something.
I'm introverted by nature, man. But in terms of getting together, I'd love to, man. Like I enjoy the conversation too. But
Teach me how to
people always
spearfish,
ask,
bro.
yeah, yeah, you're always welcome down here. I love that stuff. So yeah, come down here and we'll do it. But I don't know. Are you going to the Utah Hunt Expo, or you do any of the shows or anything?
Yes, I will be there, and I just got back from the Wild Sheep Show. I'll be at the expo. Are you coming?
Yeah, yeah. I'll be there for a couple of days. So I'll look you up, man.
Let's do that. Anything that you want people? Where can people find and learn more about you? You have a YouTube channel that's rad. What's
Yeah.
your YouTube
So
channel?
yeah, so my YouTube channel is just my name, so youtube.com/Cliff Grey. But if you just search bar it, Cliff Grey, it'll come up. And then Instagram's good, Cliff GRY, and then my website is pursuitwithcliff.com. So yeah, if anybody wants to keep track of me, those are the best ways to do it.
Well, I highly recommend it. I think it's really cool, man. It's just an adventurous life you're living, and I love that you're showing it. And also, you're really articulated. I think you probably would never admit it, but you're a really smart guy. Did you go to Stanford?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So obviously, you're smart, dude. And so you articulate things really well. You speak well. It's one of the reasons I enjoy following you, because when you speak, I can understand what you're saying. But I appreciate you
Yeah,
coming on the
well, that's
podcast.
yeah, I appreciate, man. Of course, thanks for having me, dude. When we'll get together. I'll see you at the expo, and then I got another couple people in the hunting business that keep talking to me about spearfishing. So I think we need to put together like a little group trip. And
Dude,
no
let's
more
do
talk.
it.
We got to do it. Yeah,
I'm
we'll do
in.
it,
I'm
man.
in. Let's go. All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, man. Bye.
The Altitude Show is brought to you by GoHunt.com. GoHunt.com is the place for all things hunting. And the coolest thing is that their app now incorporates not just maps, but also some of the key features from the website, including draw odds, harvest success, public land percentage in an area, trophy potential, weapon season type, season dates, all incorporated into the app. They know that most of you, like me, are using your smartphone most of the time. You're not on your desktop. So they brought all these features over into the Go Hunt app to make the experience for you as a hunter just a little bit more convenient. So go check it out. If you're not a member of Go Hunt, you should be. It's an incredible service. Go become an insider. Use my code Altitude. You'll get a discount, and you will also become a better hunter. So go become a Go Hunt member, and you'll be able to use the same features that you use on their website right there on your app, and along with your maps. So use code Altitude. Helps the show. Have a good day.